Welcome to the deep dive. We've got a fascinating stack of material right here, all sent in by you, our listener. And it's really laser focused on one of the biggest challenges in language learning, getting truly fluent in spoken English.
That's right. And the source material you shared, it zeroes in on, well, one specific technique.
Okay.
Which it puts forward as potentially, the most powerful way to bridge that gap.
What gap is that exactly?
Between knowing English in your head and actually speaking it out loud with confidence.
Got it. So our mission today is to kind of crack this open. We're going to dig into what this technique actually is.
Yeah, and explore why the material you sent claims it works so well.
Right, and walk through the practical steps it outlines so you can see how you might start using it yourself.
Because it really addresses a core frustration, doesn't it? That feeling so many language learners hit.
Definitely. You've studied, you understand loads, but then you go to speak and the words just, they don't come out. It feels like hitting a wall.
Exactly, that wall.
Okay, let's talk about that wall first. Because the material you provided, it spends some time on this, acknowledging this problem. And it's something so many learners feel, personally.
Well, the core issue it highlights is this imbalance.
Imbalance?
Yeah, an imbalance many learners face. They invest huge amounts of time and energy into input.
Okay, so like reading articles, listening to podcasts.
Watching movies, drilling grammar, building vocab lists, all that stuff, which is, absolutely necessary. You need that foundation.
Of course. Building that understanding is critical. You have to know what the language is doing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But where the disconnect often happens, according to this material, is with the output.
The speaking part.
The actual physical, real-time act of speaking. When input gets prioritized so heavily over output, you build up this huge passive knowledge base. It's in there somewhere.
But it's trapped. It's that classic, I understand everything, but I just can't speak feeling.
Precisely. The material describes it pretty vividly. Your brain knows the English passively, but when you need to produce it, right then, spontaneously, that active pathway, the one connecting your thought directly to the spoken word, well, it just hasn't been trained enough.
So you hesitate or translate in your head?
Yeah, you hesitate, you translate, you kind of freeze up.
And the material you sent is quite empathetic here. It really makes it clear. If this is you, it's not a sign that you're not smart enough.
No.
Or you're too old, or you're just inherently bad at languages.
Absolutely not.
Yes.
It frames it simply as a consequence of how your language muscles, so to speak, have been exercised.
Not exercised in this case.
Right. It's presented as just a natural outcome of focusing mostly on consuming the language without dedicating specific active practice time to producing it.
Okay, so how does the material suggest we tackle this? It introduces a technique, calls it a kind of secret weapon for fluency, actually.
And that technique, according to the guide you provided, is called shadowing.
Shadowing. Okay, intuitively, it sounds like following someone closely. How does that translate to language practice?
It's quite literal, actually, the way the material describes it.
Really?
Yeah. You find a source of native English speech, could be, say, a scene from a show, a bit of a podcast, a YouTube video.
Okay.
And you listen to it while simultaneously speaking the exact same words out loud.
At the same time.
As close to the original speaker's timing as you possibly can. Like your voice is the shadow literally following theirs.
Wow. So you're essentially talking alongside them, or even slightly over the original audio, trying to mimic it live.
That's the core idea. Yeah. You're not waiting for them to finish a sentence or pausing.
Right.
You're trying to match their pace, their rhythm, their intonation, pronunciation, and the words themselves, all in real time.
That sounds incredibly active, very different from just listening.
It is. And the material makes a really interesting point here. It suggests this is fundamentally how we learned our first languages as kids.
How so?
Well, we didn't sit down with grammar books, right? We mimicked. We copied the sounds, the rhythms, the patterns we heard around us.
Yeah, that's true.
So it argues that shadowing taps into that same sort of natural learning mechanism. And importantly, it highlights that it's simple, it's free,
Always good.
and you can do it entirely on your own. No partner needed.
Okay, that starts to build a picture of why it might be effective. Let's dig into those mechanisms. The material you sent mentions there's even a kind of science behind this.
Right. It explains fluency less as just knowing facts about English and more about building strong, efficient neural pathways.
Neural pathways.
Yeah. It's about creating a really direct, fast connection between thought you want to express and the physical act of your mouth making the sound.
Bypassing that slow translation step in your head.
Exactly. Bypassing that slow, clunky internal translation.
So it's like building a superhighway between your brain and your mouth instead of taking all those complicated back roads.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
Exactly. And when you shadow, you're essentially paving that highway. The guide you shared lists several specific benefits this kind of intense, simultaneous practice builds.
Well, I can immediately see how it would train pronunciation, right? You're literally trying to copy the sounds.
Absolutely. That's a huge direct benefit.
Yeah.
But it also simultaneously sharpens your listening skills.
How so?
Because you have to be listening so intently to catch all the subtle sounds and rhythms to match them.
Ah, right. You can't tune out.
Not at all. And it dramatically helps with speaking speed. Not just saying individual words faster, but moving between them naturally, smoothly.
The flow.
The flow, exactly. It also helps you absorb natural sentence structures and grammar patterns instinctively.
Because you're using them, not just reading about them.
You're reproducing them in context, yeah. Not just analyzing them on a page.
So you're kind of embedding the patterns through doing rather than just thinking.
Precisely. And the material notes that this active production, hearing yourself actually produce authentic sounding English, builds confidence in your own speaking voice.
That makes sense.
Over time, this practice helps quiet that internal translator. And it allows you to start processing and even, thinking in English more automatically.
I really like the analogy the material uses here. It says it's less like studying a map and more like going to the gym.
Yes, I like that too.
You're actively building the physical and mental coordination needed for fluent speaking.
It emphasizes that speaking is a skill, like playing an instrument or learning a sport. It needs physical practice.
And shadowing is that targeted workout.
That's how it's framed, yeah.
So how does the material suggest you actually, do this? It provides a pretty helpful step-by-step guide, breaking it down into levels.
Yes, it lays out a clear progression. For the beginner level, the recommendation is start small, like really small.
Yeah, small.
Short clips, maybe only 15 to 30 seconds long. And crucially, at this stage, use subtitles.
Okay, small chunks with training wheels. What kind of clips work best here?
The material suggests things that are readily available. A little snippet from a TED Talk, a short phrase from a podcast, maybe a specific line or two from a TV show. Anything with clear audio, really.
Got it. And what's the actual process, the sequence of steps for that tiny clip?
It's actually a multi-step process just for that one short clip. First, just listen. Don't speak. Just understand the meaning.
Okay, step 1, just listen.
Step 2, listen again. But this time, read the subtitles out loud as you hear the words.
Ah, connecting the visual word to the sound.
Exactly. Hearing and reading simultaneously and speaking what you read.
Okay, then.
Step 3, listen again, but now pause after each sentence or maybe even just a short phrase and repeat it back.
Okay, listen, pause, repeat.
Yeah, this helps you focus on reproducing those chunks accurately. And then finally, the core shadowing step. Listen again and try to speak with the audio in real time, aiming to match the voice as closely as you can.
That's a really structured way to build up to the simultaneous part. Feels less intimidating.
It does. And the material advises doing that whole sequence for that one short clip, maybe 3 to 5 times. And the key message here is, don't aim for perfection at first. Just go through the motions, get used to it.
Okay, makes sense. So once you're comfortable there, you move up to the intermediate level. What changes then?
You increase the length of the clip, maybe to 1 or 2 minutes. And critically, you take off the training wheels. No subtitles.
Ah, okay. Less visual support, longer duration. How does the process simplify at this stage?
It gets simpler. You listen once through without shadowing, just to get the overall meaning, the gist.
Okay.
Then you jump straight into shadowing along with the audio in real time for the full minute or 2.
No pausing and repeating?
Not necessarily, unless you want to focus on a tricky bit. The main focus here shifts. It's less about getting every single word perfect.
And more about?
More about capturing the overall tone, the stress patterns, the rhythm, the natural flow of spoken English, the music of it.
Moving beyond just the words into the melody of the language.
Exactly. And the material adds a really valuable step here. Record yourself shadowing that clip.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, and then listen back, comparing your version to the original. This gives you really objective feedback.
See where you're actually matching up and where you're a bit off.
Precisely. And then you can specifically practice those phrases or rhythms that were difficult for you. The goal is really smoothing out your delivery, making it sound more natural.
Okay, that sounds like solid practice. And then for the advanced level, What's next?
This is where you tackle much longer segments, like a full 3 to 5 minute conversation or maybe a monologue.
Wow, okay.
And here, there are no subtitles, no pausing. You're just shadowing the entire duration, trying to keep up in real time.
That sounds like the full immersive experience, like really being in the flow.
It is. And at this level, the material says you're naturally absorbing things like authentic intonation, those little filler words native speakers use.
Like, and,
Exactly. Those natural hesitations and transitions and complex real-life conversational phrases. But
yes,
the material highlights a crucial additional step for advanced learners. After you shadow that 3-5 minute clip, you switch roles.
Switch roles!
You become the speaker. You try to summarize or explain the content of that clip in your own words.
Oh, that's clever. That forces you to actually use the language you've just been mimicking, pulling it into active production based on your understanding.
Absolutely. It integrates the listening, the mimicking, and then your own creative output. It ties it all together.
Right.
And the material strongly advises doing this kind of practice daily, even if it's just for short periods. It claims that consistent repetition is what makes your brain finally click and start automating the process.
That click is what everyone's looking for. And to help people actually get started, the material you provided even includes like a sample 7-day plan.
Yes, it does. It gives you a really concrete way to build the habit. And it suggests varying the sources and the focus each day, which is smart.
So what does it look like?
Okay, so Monday, it suggests shadow a 30-second podcast clip with subtitles, beginner level.
Okay.
Tuesday, shadow a 1-minute TV show clip, but no subtitles, intermediate level. Wednesday, record yourself shadowing a clip, listen back, and just identify 1 or 2 areas to work on, that feedback loop. Thursday, shadow the introduction of a TED Talk. They usually have clear speakers.
Good idea.
Friday, shadow a clip of a real phone conversation. You know, you can find examples on YouTube or sometimes in movies. Get that real world feel.
Right. More natural, maybe less polished.
Exactly. Saturday, shadow a longer clip, maybe intermediate or advanced level, and then do that switch roles thing, summarize its content in your own words.
Putting it all together.
Yeah. And then Sunday, just take a moment to reflect. How did it feel this week? And then challenge yourself to just speak freely on any topic for maybe 2 minutes.
That feels really manageable. Builds nicely. And there's a pro tip included too.
Yes. And it's a great one. I think it says, pick voices you genuinely enjoy listening to. Maybe it's your favorite actor, a specific podcast host you like, a teacher whose voice resonates with you. Using material you find engaging just makes the practice feel less like a chore, right? And more like something you actually want to do, more fun.
That seems absolutely critical for sticking with any kind of practice long term. Now, one of the biggest hurdles for language learners, maybe the biggest, is shyness. Or just that fear of speaking out loud, even to themselves sometimes. Does the material address that directly?
It does, yeah.
Yeah.
And it makes a really strong case that shadowing is, well, almost uniquely suited for shy learners. It calls it perfect for them.
Okay, why? Why is it particularly good for someone who's maybe hesitant to speak?
Because, as the material points out, it completely removes the social anxiety factor.
How so?
You don't need a speaking partner. You don't need to perform for anyone. There's no teacher grading you.
Right.
You can do it completely alone in the privacy of your own room, your car, wherever. You can even speak quietly if you need to at first.
Yeah.
There is zero external judgment.
So it takes all that audience pressure right out of the equation.
Exactly. And the material suggests that just by building the physical habit of producing English sounds and rhythms out loud through shadowing, you gradually become more comfortable and confident just hearing your own voice speaking English.
You get used to the sound of yourself speaking it.
Precisely. It claims that this practice helps you build the ability to speak English without that constant fear bubbling up, leading you to feel more natural, calmer, and eventually, kind of proud of how you sound.
That would be huge for a lot of people.
It even puts a time frame on it, suggesting you might see noticeable changes in just your comfort level after only about 10 days of consistent practice.
Wow, 10 days for a noticeable change in feeling. That's a powerful claim. Does the material offer any sort of quick glimpses into how this has actually worked for others, like real examples?
It does include a few brief examples, yeah. Little snapshots of learners who apparently found success with this method.
Like who?
Well, there's the story of Sarah from Egypt. She apparently struggled with fear, especially speaking in work meetings.
Okay, high pressure.
Yeah. But after about 3 weeks of shadowing YouTube videos regularly, she felt her speaking become almost automatic in those situations. The fear lessened significantly.
Wow, automatic speaking in meetings. That sounds like a massive transformation.
Then there's Luis from Mexico. He incorporated shadowing for just 10 minutes every night. Not a huge time commitment.
No.
For about a month. And he felt a significant improvement in the natural flow of his speech. He said he sounded less robotic, more smooth.
So consistency seems really key, even if it's just small doses each day.
That seems to be the message.
Yeah.
And one more, Min from Korea described herself as very shy,
Okay.
but found she could confidently speak to foreigners after using shadowing, specifically with English language K-dramas.
Oh, using content she already liked.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And she highlighted that she actually found the practice fun, which obviously kept her motivated.
Yeah, these don't sound like professional linguists or anything. They sound like regular, everyday learners facing really common challenges who found this pretty practical technique made a tangible difference, not just in their fluency, but in their confidence too.
They really serve as compelling illustrations, drawn directly from the material you shared, of the potential impact this one technique can have.
So, okay, pulling it all together then. The core message from the material you sent seems to be that shadowing offers this surprisingly simple, free, and apparently incredibly effective method to bridge that divide, the gap between understanding English passively and actually speaking it actively, fluently, and ideally with growing confidence.
It sort of bypasses some of the mental roadblocks by focusing squarely on the physical act of mimicking the natural flow and building those direct pathways from thought to speech.
Right, that highway analogy.
Exactly. And as you highlighted, it's presented as a particularly valuable tool for tackling that fear of speaking, precisely because you can practice it completely alone.
Which brings us right back to you, our listener. The material you shared, it really positions this technique as a potential game changer. A kind of secret weapon, maybe, for your own journey towards fluency.
And it's right there. It's accessible. It requires basically nothing but some audio you like and your willingness to, well, open your mouth and speak along.
Yeah. The final encouragement in the material is actually quite inspiring, I thought. It challenges that whole idea that you need to be perfect before you dare to speak.
Right. It argues that fluency isn't really about eliminating every single mistake or having some kind of flawless accent.
It's more fundamental than that.
It's fundamentally about daring to use your voice, starting now, not waiting for some hypothetical someday when you feel ready.
It's less about studying about speaking and much more about just actually speaking, even if it's just putting on headphones, finding some audio you enjoy.
And letting your voice follow along, as the material puts it quite nicely. Speak with courage. Speak with joy. Speak with your heart.
So the powerful question the material really leaves us with, and maybe especially you, the listener, is this. What does it actually mean for you to take that step, maybe even right now, today, and trust your voice enough to just let the world hear it, regardless of how ready or how perfect it might feel in this moment?